Intersection Magazine Podcast.
Welcome to Intersection Magazine Podcast. Today I'll be summarizing the Intersection Magazine issue of September 2025. It's the 9th volume and the 12th issue. Once again, I'm your host, Nicholas Kianda. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. So for the month of September, there are a couple of issues that I'll be dealing with or that we dealt with. The first was the Elite Overproduction Hypothesis by Noah Smith. The second was our Founders Freedom Supplement, which we always feature every time of the month. We do this because we're in a partnership with Founders Freedom for content on leadership, boards, governance, and all those kinds of issues. The third is a piece which we called The Noise Between the Signals. This is a piece written by Brad Slingerlend of NZS Capital. And the fourth is a Q&A with Farouk Mark Machibi of the Gatsby Marketing Agency. This is the author of the African Startups Playbook. We have a conversation with Mark, and we think that this will be valuable for all those that are listening. So we normally start the magazine with a summary of some of the projects we're working on, as well as the work that we do. We see it as an opportunity to advertise our services. So we have the web design and web hosting, but not only do we do that, we also have a service that we offer to teach others how to do the same stuff. So our designs are pretty simple. We have basic designs with HTML, cascading style sheets, and JavaScript, but those are super basic sites. Then we have design using content management systems, and then we have design using simple what you see is what you get editors. Now, fortunately for those who are using tools such as this resellers panel, you will find that you have a suite of services that are available within the resellers panel that will let you access the most popular content management systems, Drupal, WordPress, a bunch of others. In this case, I've used WordPress. Most of my designs are designed with WordPress. I've also had the opportunity to design and use content management systems for e-commerce sites. So some of you might appreciate that usage. But usually what happens with this is you have a WordPress site, and then you find a template. And on the template, you find templates that are built specifically for the use of e-commerce sites. Then what you do is you have plugins. And these plugins have different functions. There could be a plugin for adding payment options. So that's how the system works. Now, the standard content management system has a couple of tools handling front-end and back-end development. So those who are not too willing to jump into the technicalities of web design or web hosting, front-end and back-end, might appreciate a system that does all that for you using a simple to use interface. But of course, it takes some learning as well. So the plan is you bring your own laptop, and maybe in about 2 to 4 weeks, we'll teach you how to get this done. So not only are we concentrating on the design, but we also like to give you bits and pieces about how to actually host a page. Now you can do that with different channels. I personally use a system called Resellers Panel, but you can also build your own servers. For that, I usually recommend the use of Linux. So I have a copy that was graciously donated to me by the people at Ubuntu. So I have the Ubuntu workstation and Ubuntu server. So of course, for many of these systems, you'd have to do your own research, install it on your own, and then learn how to use it. If that's not the case, then you could have your own servers built using PCs or laptops with expanded capabilities, and then devote one to mail service and the other for file services. Alternatively, you could use virtual hard drives, where you devote each of those different hard drives to different tasks in your server settings. But that's going into the deep end, for which I am not that familiar. Anyhow, that's basically some of the stuff that I'll teach you. And this issue, as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing bits and pieces of our micro poetry. We have a restaurant watch. For the restaurant watch, what I normally do is I show you what I'm working on under Hope First Bakeries. So you'll find images of products that I've been testing, some of our offerings in terms of what we offer at the bakery. But this time we're focusing on the overproduction hypothesis, which is basically, as far as I can understand it, is the relationship between how elites or how those the middle class or the upper classes devote how much time they devote to learning and what the relationship between what they're learning and how effective it's being used in the world is. And so you're measuring, for example, courses, you're looking at economies, you're looking at the struggles between democracies and types of government or leadership with what's going on in the markets and in public. And then you're analyzing how effective some of these courses are in determining or in shaping the future of the country, whether that means in protests or economics up and downs and things of that nature. We'll go into a little bit more in the November issue because that, I believe, will be the final issue for discussion. Those are some useful tips that you'll find, or some ideas that you'll find in the Elite Overproduction Hypothesis. Then, of course, we'll have Brad Slingerland's piece, which I also found quite fascinating, especially because I had written before or was interested in the subject of fads, trends, and how many of us often get affected or get pulled in by some of these ideas, especially when they're popularized by media or pundits. The third will be the quick Q&A with Farouk Mark Muchibi, and this one was really a question and answer with him. Having looked at some of the literature he's put out there, I find his ideas fascinating, so I wanted to have a Q&A with him so that you can get a little bit more insight into who he is, what he's working on, and how you can work along with him, appreciate the paper that he's put out there. We discuss his paper in other of our works, and I've had a back and forth with him regarding this paper, but you'll appreciate what he's doing when you read his paper, so I'll give you details in later podcasts. So that's pretty much what's inside this issue. For the first piece on Noah Smith, he talked about how there was a steady number in terms of the population in the US that was pursuing a degree in law. And then there was a rise from between 2015 and 1970, from 1970 to 2015. And then there was a plateau in terms of how many people actually studying the law, those who were enrolling in law school. So then he compares those numbers to other industries, and he mentions how newspapers, periodicals, internet publishing, motion picture, video production, he compares how all of those were affected by the major trend that took place with people moving away from print media. And then he goes on to talk about jobs or job postings for those who are in humanities, the English language, history, philosophy, religion, and classical studies. Classical studies, incidentally, remained pretty much the same between 2000 and 2015, while there was a decline in English, a decline in other languages, decline in history, a decline in philosophy. Pretty much a similar or trend in religion as in classical studies. They both remained relatively the same. The tragedy, I think, with the decline in history is we're told that history repeats itself, so if there are fewer people studying history, then I think that should be a concern of ours, because then we're not going to be able to detect anything that's going on in the market if it happened before. In Founders Freedom, I like to discuss or to highlight some of what they're doing. There are experts in strategy formulation, in governance. Governance talking about board evaluation, board development. If you read or if you listen or interact with them with the media online, you'll also find very useful tips for those who are interested in setting up a board. How do you select a board? What's the difference between a board, management, and then of course your CEOs and that position of leadership. Martin Matuku and Joyce Haima are amazing people, and they have put together great content on that subject. So I think you should, if you're in the Kenyan area, if you're even abroad, they have a scope of services that they can help you to establish a decent board. We also have a publishing arm, and for that we have our glossary of technical terms and acronyms. We also have a communication survival kit. That's pretty much a piece that helps you, a book that helps you identify for the 12 months, one central idea that you can work on for that month as you build a communication strategy that will help you survive those complex and hard times. For those interested in the podcast, of course, we have 15-second ads for $25, sponsorship of a season for $300, and then which gives you access to our materials. For terms of what you're doing for the season, we're thinking maybe you sponsor a 3-month period. So that's 3 times 4 months, or let's say 4 weeks times 3 months, which is 12 episodes. And so we do that for a season. We mention your name for a few of those seasons, and then you sponsor a theme, if that's health, if that's women's rights, if that's innovation, if that's the environment, if that's environmental protection. Broad themes of that nature can be supported in partnerships with us. There's also now a new podcast that we've created for those who are more spiritually minded. It's called Transition, Transformation, and Radical Thinking Podcast. You might enjoy the content we put together, especially if you are more spiritually minded. Just a point of note, the Intersection Magazine podcast also has the same theme, except that we focus a lot more on technology and innovation. But the TTRT podcast is more like on the spiritual side of those 3 major subjects. We also have put together our web design and hosting costs. For those of you who may be interested in that service, please get in touch with us for those services. Now, Noise and Signals with Brad Slingerlend mentions a few interesting ideas. He talks about the importance of the stablecoin ecosystem. You have to distinguish between the main coins, that is your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, and then your altcoins. Then, of course, the coins that are pegged to a currency, which are what they call the stable coins. In terms of volatility, you usually have a challenge with the other coins because they're not related to any currency that we know of, and therefore they tend to be more irregular or volatile. So the rising interest now is in for those who invest in stable coins. He goes into a little bit more thinking about customer behavior, importance of security with stable coins, and then of course the issue of trust. How much trust do people have in the current system that exists with relating to banks, and how cryptocurrencies can provide a better alternative to a system in which trust is no longer what it used to be. Of course, the other thing that people are usually drawn to when they're thinking about cryptocurrency is the avoidance or the removal of the middleman from the whole equation. For movies or series reviews, I wanted to talk about the transition that one of the major characters, happens to be Tony Soprano's second-hand man, faces. Is really a young lad. I believe he's a nephew of his. So he's going through a transition, and I think the episode in which we featured for this summary really illustrates what some of us will go through when we're having to make change, when we're looking to redefine ourselves, having gotten exhausted by some of the activities in which we've been involved. We also share a piece on how to monetize. We wanted to do a series on monetizing some of the most popular social media services, so we looked at advice from systems like Microsoft Copilot, and so we put together some ideas about how to monetize using different social media platforms. Our last 4 months is also made available for you so that you can have a glimpse in terms of what we've covered those last 4 months, so that you can make the decision if you want to purchase earlier versions of the magazine for your own development. We were back in September 2025, also helping market our friend's product, which was a house she was having on sale in a place called Menvu. So the time for that has run out, and so I'm no longer in charge of making that happen, but you will have the ad still available in that issue of the magazine if you purchase it, and you can use some of the numbers that are available, or at least they can be forwarded to the owner of the house if you're still interested in the purchase. Now, for the interview with Mark, I wanted to know a little bit more about his education. What was he thinking about when he put together the book? If you're interested in his paper, you will appreciate what he's been working on, or his thesis, which really covers relationships. He thinks that relationships are central to tech and innovation ecosystem, and so he's come up with what he calls minimum viable relationships. So look him up, look up Farouk Mark Muchibi, and you'll get a lot more about what he's written about in his earlier work. He's also quite a prolific writer on LinkedIn, has some amazing ideas on essays which he's written, and you will appreciate his work. He has a platform called africamarketors.com, which has been created to be a knowledge hub for African entrepreneurship and investment. We also talk about what he does in marketing, consultancy, and brand strategy, as well as his inroads into real estate. Mark Farouk Muchibi is also the brains behind Gatsby Institute, or the Gatsby Group. And so those of you who want to work with him on those projects or find out a little bit more about what he does, you can get in touch with him. So that's pretty much basically the content for the September issue. I've been your host, Nicholas Kianda. Once again, for those who have been subscribing, we thank you so much for subscribing. We put this together so that those of you who may not necessarily have time to read the whole magazine, browse through it, or in a sense, get an audio summary of the magazine to know what is in it, so that when you're reading, you have faster ability to capture the information. Or if you don't have the magazine in form and you're not a subscriber, you can listen and find out what's in the magazine, and then hopefully join us and become a subscriber. You guys keep us going. You keep the lights on, so thank you for that. You also keep me encouraged with the insights and comments that you give. Once again, I've been your host, Nicholas Kianda. Look forward to giving you something fresh in the next month.
Intersection Magazine Podcast.